Hey everyone, welcome back to Unlearn with Bianca. Today we are diving deep into a topic that I know so many women are curious about: balancing hormones, training smart, and fueling our body in a way that actually supports our health and well-being. And who better to talk to us about this than today's guest, Sheree Beaumont? Sheree is a functional medicine nutritionist and women's health expert whose mission is to help women take control of their health, ditch the confusion, and feel amazing in their bodies. I've seen Sheree speak before and she knows her stuff. So, really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome, Sheree.
Oh, thank you so much, Bianca. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, can't wait to dive into it. So, do you just want to start by sharing a bit about your journey and what has led you into this world of women's health and your passion around that?
I love this question and I also hate this question because I always say to my clients, and every time I do an interview, I could literally take up the whole hour with my story, and not from an egotistical point of view, but because I have been through it all in my journey. Actually started when I was 22 months old. So I was diagnosed with celiac disease when I was really, really little, and I truly, strongly believe that that's why I'm in the field that I'm in today. For those of you that don't know, celiac disease is an autoimmune condition, and so I grew up my entire life having to read labels, understand nutrition, understand what I was putting into my body because any amount of gluten could trigger a severe reaction. Now, fast forward to when I was about 13 or 14, I went on the path of going on the pill, as many, many women do. Particularly for me, it was about my skin and my skin health. So, couple that with being under a restrictive diet, the fact that body image issues are huge in this world, and I put myself in a really unhealthy position. I was as we journeyed on into my teen years, I became bulimic. I had a whole host of gut issues that stemmed from my autoimmunity. My skin wasn't working in the way that I wanted to, even though I was on the pill. I was getting anxious. I had PMS. I had all of these things that just flared up, not to mention the weight that wouldn't stick. Wouldn't shift. And so over time, I just developed a really unhealthy relationship with my body. I didn't understand what it was doing or what was going on. And it wasn't until I was actually studying nutrition at university and still racking my brain, but going like, this isn't right. Like, I'm eating less, I'm moving more, I'm being taught that everything should shift. Why do I feel like crap? Why is my energy on the floor? Why is nothing working the way that science says it should? And
Mhm.
it was from there that I went down the functional medicine path, and started to investigate things from a holistic standpoint and go, there's got to be more to the picture. And from
Mhm.
there, coming off the pill, understanding that our menstrual cycle is actually a superpower, not something to dread every month, that was when my whole perspective changed. I was able to heal my relationship with food and heal my relationship with my body, heal my gut issues, which in turn led to hormonal balance, which then led to my body reflecting the work that I was doing at the gym and being happy in the skin that I was in.
I love this. Thank you so much for sharing. There were elements there that would have been the exact same as my story, and I'm sure a lot of women listening as well. So it's so amazing that you've found something. We've found basically what works and what we're not told about, which is, yeah, really important to uncover. So, what kind of woman are you working with at the moment typically? Like, what are some things that you're really passionate about? What issues are they coming with and you're helping them resolve?
Yeah, I love this question. And s- so many women come to me for health and hormone issues, right, off the
Mm.
front. And over time, I've learned to realize that a lot of it's an underlying detoxification or metabolic issue. But
Mhm.
as females, I think there's this conditioning that's happened through society where we're just supposed to love our bodies for the body that we're in. And I am in full support of that. I think every body is beautiful. However, there seems to be this level of shame around, I want to lose weight, or I want to feel sexy, or I want to be confident in my skin now. I get women who come to me and they're like, okay, I've got so much period pain. I'm struggling with endometriosis. I've got PCOS. I've got irritable bowel syndrome. My energy's on the floor. They're really often high performing women that they're running their own businesses, very career driven, very ambitious, in some area of their life. And so they're pushing their limits and their body's under stress and it's taking its toll. As a result, the weight is also sticking. But when they're on the call or when they're on that initial conversation with me, you see them shrink and it just breaks my heart because they're like, I want to get away from all the pain that I'm in, or I want to get away from the poor energy. And then I'm like, okay, beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to achieve? And their whole body just kind of shuts down and closes. They go, I wouldn't mind losing a few kilos or a few pounds. And it's understanding that it's okay to want to do that. And so I really do work with women on the mindset as well to help them not only shift the weight, if that's what feels in alignment for them, but do so with confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we have that feeling internally, it projects externally, and it's that cycle, isn't it? I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
So, in terms of gut health, yeah, gut health and overall well-being, what is the connection? Can you help our listeners that are new to this concept around gut health and how important it is for our overall health and happiness?
Of course. So when it comes to gut health, where one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Hippocrates. It was said about 2,500 years ago that all disease begins in the gut. And I
Mm.
am a strong believer, and I feel like we're finally coming full circle with that as a society and understanding the importance. Now, if you're not familiar with the term microbiome, that is essentially what's going on inside of your gut. So, if you think about your intestines, we have all of these beautiful bugs inside of us. We have over 100 trillion
Oh,
of those
wow.
beautiful microbes that live inside of us, and we have what's called a symbiotic relationship with them. Now, that means it's mutually beneficial. Many people will be aware of a parasite, or what a parasite can do is kind of like a leech. They only
Mhm.
take. So there's a parasitic relationship. And that's where people go, oh, I don't want these bugs inside of me. No, we don't want the parasites inside of us. What we do want is these beautiful bugs that give us benefit when we benefit them. So it's very mutually beneficial to have them inside of us and to have them in an abundance and in a richness and in a diversity, because the more rich and diverse, meaning if we think of our microbiome like an ecosystem or like a forest, you're going to have shrubs, you're going to have bugs, you're going to have animals, you're going to have tall trees, short trees, everything. Like, think about the Amazon forest, right? I quite often liken it to that. You want to have it as diverse and as rich and abundant as the life inside in the Amazon forest. And so when we have that diversity, when we have that richness, when we have that beautiful symbiotic relationship thriving, your mental health is going to thrive, because we have a connection between our gut and our brain, which is connected through our enteric nervous system. You're going to have beautiful, a clear mind. Say goodbye to brain fog. Your energy is going to be optimized. Your digestion, that's part. And I think that's where a lot of people think, oh, I don't have gut health issues. My tummy's fine. I don't have irritable bowel syndrome. I go to the bathroom every day. I'm good. But you're not going to be bloated. You're not going to have food intolerances. You're not going to have hormonal imbalances, because a lot of that stems from our gut. Your thyroid's going to be functioning optimally. Your metabolism is going to be functioning optimally. You're going to feel radiant. You're going to have beautiful, clear skin. All of that starts in our gut. 70% of our immune system lives in our gut. And so if we think about how much is in the center of our core, right? That's what we really need to start taking care of. And that's why it's so important for our overall health.
Yeah, thank you for that breakdown. It really makes sense. I think we're finding more about the gut as the second brain as well, just in terms of mental health too. I'd love to dive into the hormonal part of it, but first, in terms of gut health, what can people start to just simple steps that they can start to do so that they are taking care of their gut health?
Mhm. This is obviously not something that people love talking about. And honestly, it's the thing that I have a conversation with as soon as I meet someone. And I'm like, look, I know we've just met, but we're going to talk about your poop.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? So it is a daily conversation for me. But that is the first place I get people to physically look. I don't want to see it, but you guys can start looking at it. Um, because it's a window into what's going on in your body. If you're seeing undigested food in your stools, if your stools are floating, if you're not having a bowel movement every day, which, ladies, that is the most important part for our detoxification pathways and our hormones, to know that they're functioning effectively and we're clearing out any excess toxins that we don't need, including an accumulation of hormones, the color of your bowel movements. Everything like that gives us a window into what's going on. And so when we're able to take a look at that first and foremost, you're going to see so much about your digestive system. Then we're going to look at, are you bloating? Is like your skin clear? Are you lethargic? Have we got that mental clarity? Are we having really low thoughts? Are we having really anxious thoughts? 95% of our serotonin is produced in our gut, your happy hormone. And so when we start to look at all of these different avenues of symptomology and really reflect on our gut health, that's when we can start to tie the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, I love that. So if someone is listening and they are a bit sluggish in terms of their bowel movements and they're seeing the signs, is there one thing they can start to be mindful of? Is it eating a variety of foods? What would be the first step? Because I know these things, when people say, like, look after your gut, it can just feel so like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, and it can feel really overwhelming, especially nowadays. It's like, eat your probiotic foods, do this, take that out, eat low carb, eat high. There's a million diets under the sun. The key things that I get my clients to focus on is, first and foremost, how you're eating is just as important as what you're eating. And I know that you'll understand this on such a deep level from a neuroscience perspective and from a nervous system perspective, because if you're living in fight or flight, you're shutting down your digestive system. So you could be eating the most beautiful, clean, whole food diet. But if you are doing so from a stressed place, if you are skipping meals, if you are running around while you're eating, it's not getting the nutrients into your body the way that it should. And
Mm-hmm.
so, starting with 5 to 6 belly breaths before you consume your meals is going to shift you into that parasympathetic state, is going to shift you into that rest and digest, allow your stomach acid to be secreted, allow your digestive enzymes to come into play. And so, you're no longer going to be sitting there wondering why you're bloated after your first meal, right? Or even after drinking water. Like, this doesn't make sense.
Yes,
That's a
good one.
huge, huge part of it. The other
Mm-hmm.
part of it is, we do, as a society, tend to consume a lot of processed foods and sugars. Understanding that that is what feeds the bad bugs is
Yeah.
really important. This doesn't mean we can never have those things, but if majority of our diet is coming from fiber-rich foods, whole real foods, and a moderate carbohydrate intake, right? Not a high carbohydrate intake, you're going to be supporting your microbiome to be thriving. Your fibrous foods, so your non-starchy vegetables, all the colors of the rainbow that go on your plate, that's what feeds the good bugs. So those are really, really simple places to start, but also very easy, like to just start to put into play from now.
Yes, so good. And I just love the fact that that first one was just something free that we can all do, that we can
Yes.
all be mindful of without even making a huge change. Because the more that I learn, the more that I understand the nervous system, we
Mhm.
can see, and I'm sure you're the same, we can just see how it's so intertwined into every area of our life and all the things that we struggle with. So thank you for sharing. And eating a variety, I think, is something I've also been really trying to implement over the years after a lot of restricting.
Mhm.
I decided, right, I'm going to really start to eat the rainbow, and it's just helped so much. Such a simple thing that we can all do. So, hormone health, I'm so excited to dive into this. What are some signs that women might find in their body
Mhm.
that there is a hormone imbalance? What are some things to look out for?
So, yeah, it does come back to the symptomology. And some of these you'll be thinking, oh, she just said that for gut health. And that's where we look at the body so holistically because, you've got to understand that it all works together, that all of your systems talk to each other. So,
Mm,
things like bloating can be a sign of your hormone imbalance. Again, lack of mental clarity or brain fog can also be a sign of hormonal imbalance. The ones that I most commonly see is the energy imbalance. So, waking up tired, going to sleep wired, energy crashes about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of that to do with your high or super low cortisol issues or poor blood sugar balance, in terms of being able to regulate your blood sugars, whether that's food or stress related. Then we've got the ones that are very commonly known, things like your PMS, your mood swings, heavy periods, missing periods, painful periods, breakouts around certain times of your cycle. There are anything that we think, and I think this is a really important message to get across, anything we actually think is normal as part of being a woman is not. It's common. And I really want to break that misconception today that you should not be getting symptoms around your period. You may feel a little bit tired. And by that, I mean, you're like, okay, I could do with a little bit of a pick me up today for maybe 2 days prior and maybe the first 3 days of your period. And then after that, energy should be stable and consistent, if not spiking up, right? And pain you shouldn't need any medication. You shouldn't need anything else. You should just be, oh, maybe there's a little cramp. But again, if you are healing your hormones and you've balanced your hormones, we shouldn't even, like, I don't even get period pain. Like, there is so much we can do. All of it is here. Like, your period is your monthly report card. All of it is here to tell you, hey, something's not going right in my body. And so this is your hormones, they're chemical messengers, giving you signals, sounding off the alarm if you're getting any of these symptoms, saying, hey, something's not right here. I'm either inflamed, my gut needs support, my thyroid's not happy, you're stressing me out too much. They're trying to tell you something, and it's our job as women to listen and investigate.
I think I love that quote, what you said around it being common, but not normal.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, I've thought a lot about the fact that so many of us are just put on the pill when we're like 15, 16, 17. We're on it for years. And I think that's why so many of us do lose this innate connection to our body and don't even notice if these little symptoms are popping up, because it has become so normal, because we're actually out of touch with our body's cues as well. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that, because I think so many things we live with, we just assume that it's just the way it is.
Yeah. And the pills just handed out like candy, painful period, here you go. Acne, here you go. Like, and there's no plan for you to come off it. It's just like, here. And if you want to have children, just stop with, like, the week before you want to start trying. And what you're actually doing when you're on any form of hormonal contraceptive is you're shutting down the connection between your brain and your ovaries, and you're teaching your body to just live in a 24-hour cycle and essentially function like a male. And like you say, that disconnection is where so much can start to go wrong, because we then aren't told to look out for things. What women don't even understand is the bleed that you have on the pill isn't even a real bleed. It's a withdrawal bleed, because when they designed it, they're like, oh, they're going to think it's a bit weird if they don't still have a period. It's not even a period. It is a fake period. And it's really hard to wrap your head around that sometimes.
That is crazy. I want to talk about nutrition and movement, but as we're talking about the pill, I'll just share my experience for listeners. I think I mentioned it on another episode. I came off the pill in like 2017, and I didn't get a period for 8 months. 8 months, I just did not get a period. My skin started to break out again. Post pill amenorrhea. Well, there's a label for it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, post pill amenorrhea. Yeah.
So, but at the time, although I wasn't, I overcome chronic pain, all of that, I was really healthy. I actually was, looking back now, under eating. I was overtraining, and I had this real push mentality, because I just got on that bandwagon where you're like working out heaps, you're looking really good physically in your body, getting lots of feedback around that, and I was just in that push mentality, living in London in the hustle. And so when I came off the pill, didn't get a period, that was actually my first sign of like, right, I think this might be, it looks healthy on the surface, but I think there's some things going on between that. So that was actually when I started delving in more into hormone health and women's health. And once I actually started to eat more, once I started to cut back on the training, that's when all of the tests, the results I was getting started to change. That's when, things started to shift. So I'm really curious about the nutrition side and the movement side, and how that interacts and interplays with hormone health.
Yeah. So to understand that, we've got to understand that we have a very different rhythm, I like to call it, than men. And to take it back a step further, all of the fitness trends, all of the nutritional diets that come out, right? It is starting to change. The landscape is starting to change, thankfully. But for years, for decades, all of the research has been done on males, or if we've been included in the conversation, postmenopausal women. Why?
Mhm.
Because it's too hard, quote unquote, I say this with little bunny ears. It's too hard to test it on females who are menstruating because we're too irregular and we can't account for that. Now,
Mm.
part and parcel of that is true because we do have so many hormonal fluctuations. You would have to allow to consider what's going on there. But a lot of the landscape is changing. However, what we have done, and this is where my heart breaks for women because we're often the ones that grab the literature or we grab the latest research and go, let's apply this, let's put it into action. And we're going keto. We're cutting out, certain food groups. We're then
Mhm.
pushing our bodies with these high intensity interval trainings like your Orange Theory or your F45. And we're going, how can I push my body harder, harder, harder? Because this research is saying I'm going to lose weight quicker.
Yeah.
That research was done on men.
Mm.
And we are not little men. Like women, to quote, Dr. Stacey Sims, women are not small men. And it's understanding that we have not only a beautiful circadian rhythm where you rise and set with the sun, we have hormones that operate on that, your day to day. We also have, just like the moon, a month to month cycle, which is roughly 28 to 29 days. And not everyone's going to fall in that bracket. You might be 35, you might be 26, that's fine. But understanding that we've got to deal with not only day to day fluctuations, but month to month fluctuations. And during that month to month, you're going to have different phases that we should be adjusting nutritionally and training wise to support our beautiful bodies. And this is where, to bring it back to what I said earlier, our cycle really is our superpower, not
Mhm.
something that we should look at as I'm going to get my period, but wow, I'm about to ovulate. How can I use this to my advantage? Or fantastic, I'm entering my luteal phase. What can I get complete? Like,
Yeah.
as high performing human beings, as women, we are wearing so many different hats. And when you can lean into your hormones and go, that's why this is happening at this time of the month, let me be smart about this, suddenly
Mhm.
we're operating in a completely different way.
Totally, completely. So, what are some of the misconceptions that you see and things that perhaps aren't supporting women? Women think that's supporting them in terms of training or nutrition.
Yeah, so a big one that we focus on hugely, across the board in functional medicine and hormone health, especially for women, is eating your breakfast. This massive wave of intermittent fasting came through. Same thing. All the research supports how great it is for your body. Do not get me wrong. And if you followed me or been on my journey, you'll see that I fast, but I do very different style of fasting than a 16-8 or, not eating for 2 days every week, for example. It's very intentional fasting and it's never going to be every single day because that throws our infradian rhythm. So we've got our circadian and our infradian rhythm, which is our month to month cycle, completely out of whack. It puts our body into fight or flight. It tells our body to hold on to fat. It puts our cortisol levels up. It actually dysregulates your hormones. You may see results initially, but over time, this is where I see women lose their periods. This is where I see women put on more weight, or their period symptoms become dramatically worse. So understanding that intermittent fasting is actually a disservice to you can be really game changing, but it could also be hard to get your mind around. So I say that with a lot of love. From a training perspective, to go back to the HIIT or the high intensity, again, we expect ourselves to be able to show up day in, day out, just like a man does, and push our bodies to the limit. And there'll be moments, and this is where I love seeing the aha in my clients, where they come in and I'm like, okay, where are you at in your cycle? And they're like, okay, I'm on my bleed, I'm on my period. And I'm like, okay, cool, we're going to time things down. And they're like, what? Your hormones have gone to the lowest point. You shouldn't be trying to push yourself. Your energy, like I said, is going to be naturally a little bit lower. You are losing blood. We get our energy, if you look into traditional Chinese medicine, from our blood. And so if you're depleted every single day for 3 to 5 days or 3 to 7 days, you don't want to be trying to push the HIIT high intensity. You do not have the bandwidth in your body to do so. So it's understanding there are different timings of your cycle where you can go hard, you can push, and to be honest with you, you'll probably outperform any of your previous cycles, or even potentially some of your male counterparts. And sometimes, but it's really understanding that it's not saying no to these things. It's learning when in your cycle we should say yes, and then tailoring it to the different phases.
Mhm, mhm. Ovulation, which is middle of the cycle, right? That is when we should be going. I was going to say hardest, but it's probably not even the right language. That is when.
Yeah, so ovulation is, I love this. So I liken the different phases of our cycle to the
Yeah.
seasons. I find it really easy when people start to understand it from a seasonal perspective or linking with nature. You suddenly get like, okay, cool, this makes sense. So if you think
Mhm.
about your menstrual phase as your inner winter, right? It's the time you kind of want to hibernate. You maybe don't have a huge amount of energy to output. You probably don't want to socialize that much. It's the kind of Netflix and chill type, but actually chill, not the other side. It's that kind of phase, right? Where you just want to be a little bit more introverted. Then we go into our inner spring, which is our follicular phase. So once you've finished your bleed, we're entering our follicular. This is where the energy starts to pick up. You think about spring, it's like the newness. You've planted seeds, you've got a little bit more energy. And that's where we can start to increase our intensity of training. That is when we can start to push our bodies a little bit more. Maybe you're going for more endurance. It depends what your training goal is, but you can start to play with things a lot more during that follicular phase and leading into your ovulation, which is your inner summer. And think of that as the peak, right? The beautiful sunshine, your glow. You've got so much outward energy. This could look like going for your longest run. This could look like training the hardest in terms of your hit. This could look like how I use it, which is at the gym, lifting your absolute heaviest and really utilizing that speed, that the spike, sorry, in estrogen and testosterone that's going to give you that extra boost. And then as we wind down from summer, we enter autumn or fall, and that is when we're gonna. You can actually just focus on maintenance. You may have hit a new PB, see if you can continue it, maybe, or you may drop down just slightly and maintain the intensity before dropping right off about the week before your period to a little bit more lower, like lower intensity, like yoga and walks, and slowing things down a bit before you enter that winter again.
And the importance of strength training. Do you think that's something that every woman should be doing?
100%. I know I'm a huge advocate of let's get you moving if you're
Mm.
not, and find something that you love. But this idea that going for a walk is enough, and I don't say that to put people down that are going for walks, because walks are amazing, great for nervous system regulation, blood sugar balance, everything. I do advocate for getting your walking and your steps in, but strength training is one of the most important things women can be doing from as early as they can get started. I count my blessings that I started when I was 18 in the gym, and I was starting to like lift heavier weights and not being afraid of lifting heavy. We have a tendency to lean into group fitness, which I get that from a confidence or a comfort zone makes sense, but your pump class isn't going to get you building muscle. And the more
Mhm.
muscle you have, the more metabolically active your tissue is, meaning the more like the easier it is for you to keep a healthy weight. Also from a hormonal level, from a stress reduction level, even one thing that I loved learning about, I know you do a lot of somatic work, but understanding that strength training is actually a form of somatic release.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah. So even from that perspective, and then as a preventative measure, which, this is where you lose some people, like, oh, you don't want to end up with osteoporosis or osteoarthritis, but
Mm.
the stronger you can get your bones now, the easier it's going to be. And this is so important, in our menopausal or perimenopausal years, and even post-menopause, to make sure we're really taking care of our bodies.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think it's so good to see, like, even when I go to the gym now, more and more women stepping into the weights area and actually just getting into it, because it can be quite daunting if you've
Yeah.
never stepped into that area before. Is there any words of wisdom you'd give to women that like are thinking, I want to do it, but it just intimidates me. I don't know where to start.
Yeah, totally. And it's It's knowing that, and I say this to my clients all the time, you have every right to be here just as much as anyone else. And that's not saying male versus female, it's literally anyone else. But get get someone that you feel comfortable with. You don't have to get a trainer, but if that is you just want someone to set you up with a program and just feel comfortable following someone around the gym, making sure they're watching your form, starting to encourage you to lift a little bit heavier, make sure your technique is right. That can be a really beautiful place to start. Like, you don't have to commit to someone every week, but just having that level of reassurance can be helpful. Or find a training buddy, find one of your friends that's already going, or both of you may feel. I can still remember when me and my friend, we were like, we don't know what the heck we're doing. We're watching things on Instagram and making it up, but we were giving it a go anyway. And so understanding that it's okay. And if you want to start off in the women's section of the gym, maybe you do start off in a pump class so you get used to some of the movement patterns and then take it out onto the gym floor. It's completely fine to be doing that. It's just finding where you feel comfortable to start.
Yeah, definitely. And with the nutrition side of it, are there certain times of the month that we should be increasing how much we eat? Are they around our cycle? Like, should we be eating more closer to our period? What does that look like?
Yeah, so this is where, the whole calories in, calories out, calorie deficit doesn't work specifically well for females, because unless you're taking into account your hormones, right? So this is where you've got to merge the science, you've got to merge and understand your body. In the first half of your cycle, so from day 1, which is when you bleed, till around, for argument's sake, day 14 when you ovulate, which is not for everyone. I ovulate on day 20. But, for argument's sake, let's say day 14, your body needs energy coming in so that beautiful egg can be released, right? If you are eating too little, you're going to inhibit ovulation. So you need to make sure you are eating enough. Like you said, when you're under eating, you're not getting your actual period. That's a huge issue. So let's say that's your maintenance level. Once you've ovulated, your energy requirements actually go up. And that's because your body is going, there could be an implantation that's happening. Your body's goal every single month, even though it may not be yours, it may not ever be your goal, is to fall pregnant. Now, doing this is not going to necessarily mean you fall pregnant. It's more around, what is your body looking for? It's looking for extra nutrients. At least an additional 300 to 400 calories on average is what they've seen in the literature, is what we need in that latter half of our cycle. So during your entire luteal phase, which is roughly 10 to 14 days, we actually should be increasing our energy, so the amount of food you're having, and it actually does need a little bit more carbohydrates typically. So it's not saying go and eat another whole extra meal. It might just be including a little bit more potato or pumpkin or sweet potato or rice at a main meal, and just giving your body a little bit more extra fuel. That's going to support your hormones and how beautifully your next period is.
Yeah, so good. And again, stuff that we just don't get taught. Like, I knew this from recent years, but it's not. I was quite surprised when I actually stumbled across the research, and I was like, why do we not get taught this stuff? But as we both know, women's health is starting to gain traction in the research into that area, but it's only a recent thing, I would say. Yeah. So actually on women's health, a conversation that is getting more and more talked about, which is great to see, is perimenopause and menopause and that transition. So if there's a woman listening and she is moving through those stages, are there specific things you would like to share and how that woman can support herself through these phases?
I think it's firstly really important to understand this is like a second puberty. Okay, your body is almost like a reverse in a way. So puberty was when your hormones were all coming online. You were transitioning into this infradian rhythm and your menstrual cycle. That had its kinks you had to work out, right? It was a bit clunky for most of us. Most of us were also shoved on a pill or something. But, say you didn't get put into hormonal contraceptives, you may have noticed the first couple of years your cycle was a little bit irregular. You may have noticed, you got a few symptoms because your brain and your ovaries were learning how to talk to each other. The same thing is happening in reverse. We're shutting down our ovaries, essentially. That's what's happening in menopause. And you go through, there's about 5 phases from perimenopause to actually getting into a postmenopausal situation where your hormones are slowly transitioning offline and you're relying primarily on your adrenal glands and other cells in your body to produce the hormones that your ovaries used to produce. So your progesterone and your estrogen are going to be much, much lower than they were during your menstruating years. And so we
Mm.
see longer cycles start to happen. We see shorter cycles then happen. We see the bleeding stop, but maybe not the symptoms stop. And it's understanding that this is a normal transition. And what we often do is we chuck something in, or we go back on the pill, or the amount of women I got that, oh, I'm on the Marina now because I'm in menopause. And I'm like, what happens when you come off that? Because again, you're giving your body synthetic hormones that the brain and the ovaries aren't getting the communication properly. So there's HRT now, which has come leaps and bounds from where it was. I never ever used to recommend it. Now it's a bioidentical form, and for some women, it is a game changer in getting them through. So we work it integratively with a very holistic practice, but there is a place for it if that's something that's going to support you. And I know it's a conversation or a question a lot of women typically have is, what are your thoughts on that? So
Yeah.
I'll put that out there. That being said, I think we overcomplicate this way too much, right? And I know some women look at me and go, well, you haven't been through it. What would you know? My body actually thought it was going through menopause at 21 when I was coming off the pill. I had damaged my hormones that much. It actually thought it was in a menopausal state. Now, again, mine was getting back online so that I knew how to function optimally. But regardless of where you're at, whether you are in the high estrogen phase, whether you're in the low progesterone phase, whether you're in the longer or shorter cycle phase, if you nail the foundations of hormone health, if you stop this intermittent fasting and skipping breakfast, if you start strength training, if you make sure you're eating enough, including enough protein, which is where I see so many women go wrong,
Mm.
you are going to breeze through this hormonal change. There isn't a specific menopause diet. There isn't a specific perimenopause diet. And that's where a lot of women freak out. They're like, oh, but I'm going through this. What do I need to do differently? And it's like, you need to do what we should have been doing all along.
Yes. That is where the preventative stuff comes in, right? Because
Yes.
you're literally thinking about your future phases.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's super interesting. Yeah, it's awesome to see you standing strong in your beliefs, because I think there's just so many differing opinions and thoughts out there, and then shame, like you said, if it's like the HRT,
Mm-hmm.
I've been told I shouldn't be doing that, so it's really conflictual. So I think that's a really balanced opinion you have, but also really focusing on those basics that we all should be doing.
And that's where, when a woman comes in and she's struggling with perimenopause or menopause, often it's like, you've just got to eat a little bit more protein. We've got to make
Mm-hmm.
sure your sleep is a priority. And that's where, maybe adding in a bioidentical progesterone can be helpful, because that progesterone drops off first. And then giving your body enough rest, enough nervous system regulation,
Yeah.
so that the hormones can switch off very gently and very easily, and you don't actually notice the symptoms. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. You may need a little bit of herbal support. And that's really the only difference to if someone comes to me in their early 30s and they're wanting to balance their hormones. It's very, very similar in the approach. And I think we overcomplicate it so much.
Yeah. Is there any stories or client changes that really stick out to you? People that you've worked with that have just changed, something that perhaps they thought wasn't changeable. Is there anything in particular that stands out?
I think the ones that always make my heart glow when I start to see people understand their body. I went to university to become a PE teacher and fell in love with nutrition along the way, and went down that path instead. But the innate part of me is a teacher, the teacher archetype. And so when I work with women, it's not just, here, do this, here, follow this meal plan. It's empowering them to understand their bodies. So when I work with women, it's seeing the light bulb moment go off in their head. Like, I had a client the other day, she's like, my period just showed up. And she's just in shock. And she's like, I didn't get any symptoms. I didn't snap my partner's head off. It just showed up. There was no pain. There was no cravings. And that happens like you get that feedback every week, because
Yeah.
women are waking up to understanding their bodies and realizing that this is actually a reality that can happen. And to
Mm.
further that, then seeing them heal their relationship with food, because whether you've had an eating disorder or not, a lot of women are conditioned to have disordered eating of some sort, whether they're leaning into diets, whether they're leaning into over exercising. It's still a form of disordered eating in a way. And seeing them change to respect their bodies, women that are like, I had one lady go, every time I walked into the room, the first thing I'd do is look around and see if I was the fattest person there.
Mm.
And it breaks my heart that we've gotten ourselves to that point of conditioning, that we're judging based off body image. And she wasn't judging other people, she was so harshly judging herself. And through healing her relationship with food, balancing her blood sugar levels, healing her relationship with herself, not only was she able to shift the 15 kilos, but she stopped that circuitry in her brain of comparison, because she started to feel more confident from within. She started to feel more empowered from within. She was starting to dress in a way that she felt sexy and beautiful in. And that, to me, that's the real magic, is when a woman knows that she is enough. She's not having to live in pain, whether that's mental, emotional, or physical pain from her body.
Yeah. The internal transformation which reflects externally. I agree. I find that too. That is so powerful. I'm sure you see so many amazing changes. Just if I think about all the women's health conditions and endo, PCOS, all these different things, it must just be so rewarding as well.
Oh, it is. Like I say to people every day, like, I'm so blessed that this is my job. I wake up every morning excited to, I don't even think of it as work, because, you see sometimes there can be challenging times, but you get to hold people's hands through it.
Yeah.
I'm never doing the work for people. I'm here to open the door and help guide you through. And the blessing of this work is getting to see the smiles and the happiness and the confidence and the radiance that comes from being on the other side.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Sheree. So, if listeners could take one thing from this conversation, because we have explored a few areas, if there's one thing you want to leave them with from everything you've said, what would you say?
It's funny, there's my science brain, and then there's my like self-empowerment, love yourself brain that comes
Oh,
in.
self empowerment. We all need a boost of that sometimes. Feel free to shift from that place.
Yeah. No, you're not broken. And there is a solution. I think as women, we are so gaslit by the medical society, and I don't say that in a disrespectful way, but if we think about endometriosis, it takes most women around 8 to 10 years to get a diagnosis. And that is horrifically wrong. We're told our bloods are normal. We are told that it's all in our head. And I want you to know, if you're listening, your pain, your symptoms, the gut feeling you have that something's not right in your body, it's real. Don't stuff it down. Keep advocating for your health, for your well-being. Find someone who will listen and who will support you and who resonates with you, because you aren't broken. There is just a few things, honestly, it'll be the simplest things that you won't even thought of, that someone from the outside looking in can help you change, and you'll be amazed at how you can feel. A lot of the time women will come in and they're like, I just want to be away from the pain. And I'm like, yeah, but what else do you want out of life? And knowing you can have more. It's not just being pain free, it's not just being symptom free. You can actually live the most abundant, happy life that you could ever imagine, full of energy, completely symptom free, and show up in the way that you want to in the world. We don't have to live with this.
So powerful, and so agree on that. So, as we wrap up, where can listeners find you if they're curious about your work, or they're like, yes, I need to speak to this lady? She seems like she's got some answers that I need to hear. Where can they find you, and what are you offering at the moment?
So I am absolutely everywhere at Sheree Hannah Wellness. So I'll get you to pop that in the show notes, because it's a long one to spell out. But Sheree with an S, I tend to pop up. And I work with women in a variety of different ways, whether you're just wanting to reset your metabolism, I have a little mini shred that I run, or if you're really wanting to dive deep into understanding your blood work and going into this hormonal balance, resetting your gut, doing all of the things on a far deeper level, I have a program called Reclaim Your Radiance, which is really about everything we've discussed today. And that's really how I work with people. Or you can find me over on my podcast at the Wild and Well Collective.
Well, thank you so much, Sheree, for sharing all your wisdom. I know it's going to help so many women listening.
Well, thank you so much for having me.